Well, just to start, I wanted to ask you about whether you found, it's a bit of a leading question, but whether you found the format itself that you shot on, 65mm 5-perf with those special lenses. My feeling in watching this film is it felt like it had an increased level of formalism, I suppose I'd say. There's a real calm and thought to where the camera is always, and it's also perhaps in the music having a score. Do you think that was related anyway to the choice of format, or is it the other way around? Or
no, I think you're probably right. Actually, and I like the adjective you're saying about calm, especially compared to this movie. Actually, it's lovely. But I do know what you mean. There is that aspect about this movie. I tried not to change that much of how I do what I do just because I was working with this big of a format or just because I was working in 70. I found myself, the only two movies I watched as far as other films that used Ultra Panavision 70, the only ones I watched in preparation for this was It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, which I always was a big fan of, which was shot with these lenses. I mean, literally these lenses. And I decided not to, I decided not to treat editing any different. I tried not to cinematically not treat anything that different. And one of the things that was really nice about dealing with the Weinstein Company in here is I've usually come from the aspect that film is the cheapest thing on the set, so I'm not going to worry about hoarding it. I'm just going to shoot the way I want to shoot. I wasn't cavalier when it came to shooting in the 70mm footage. I wasn't cavalier about, I didn't waste it, but I didn't really I didn't save it. I didn't bank it per se. I did what I needed to do. If I needed to do it over again, I did it over again. I didn't think about stuff like that.
Hold out there, y'all.
You don't need to cut as much because there's much more information in every single shot. Now, I didn't plan on that in advance, unless I'm trying to pull off some very specific wowy shot. Once you're in Minnie's haberdashery in particular, there's always two series of scenes going on. There's the characters who are in the foreground of the scene, and that is what the scene is about, and that is their area that they're dealing with. But then there are the characters that are in the background of that scene, whether it be Joe Gage at his table or whether it be John, Ruth, and Daisy at the bar. And that is very important because I am trapping these characters together, and they are chess pieces on a chessboard to some degree. And if the suspense is supposed to work, and by the way, if the suspense doesn't work, then the movie's going to be boring. So there really has to be this sort of Damocles of violence that is hanging over the entire movie, and you're waiting for it to fall. And when is it going to fall? And when it does fall, what does that mean? And what does it happen? And I don't want you to know the answer to those questions, but you are waiting, and you're waiting, and you don't even know what you're waiting for. But I believe knowing where all the characters were in any given moment, unless I didn't want you to, was a very, very important part of it. And I just did it organically, but frankly, I don't think I would have done it as well. I don't think I was as good of a director when it comes to blocking in the 90s as maybe I am now. But from having done, this is my 8th movie, having done 8 movies, I've gotten a little better at it. And I think in areas like that, it showed it the most. I never had a situation where I was bummed out by how big the frame was. That was never the situation. I was always just luxuriating in it and just loving looking through the viewfinder and just loving it. I mean, literally loving it. Does
that? I mean, that forces you to think about physical proximity on the camera.
It
so
does.
you want a close up, you've either got to swing a lens or physically move closer.
Yeah, well, I've been using it very psychologically as like a little tiny creep that you don't quite perceive until all of a sudden you realize the format is different. All of a sudden you realize the composition is different. I don't think it was the worst thing for me at this time of my life to not have a tool that I'd come to rely on. All right. I think there was almost a liberating aspect. No, I can't do it that way with that. But one of the things that forced me and Bob Richardson to do, which he was very happy with, and I was very happy with too, is we used a crane the way you'd use a zoom. We used a crane the way you would use a dolly. We used a crane the way you would use Steadicam. But once you took out the back wall and you could have the ass of the crane do everything, then we did everything on the crane. We shot, a moving in close-up of this bottle would have been done on the crane because why fucking not? It's so magnificent.
So where did you shoot it there? You're talking about a techno crane. So obviously, then
not the techno crane. No, I'm talking about the one where the dude is on it.
Really?
Yeah. No, I don't like the techno crane. I don't like the techno crane. I like it's Bob Richardson flying in the air like Eli Cross and the stuntman. All right, with his white hair just.
Did you have that second directorial seat? Did you get to ride too?
No, I don't. I would never do that to my fat ass. Up there along with Bob's. I wouldn't do that to my crew. I care for them too much. So I let Bob be Eli Cross and go, how tall is King Kong?
So how did you get the tie-in shots? Did you build the set on location and on a stage?
Yeah,
literally built the whole thing twice.
Absolutely, we built it twice. We built it on in that mountain range where you saw it in Colorado, and thank God we did. I mean, that was always the idea. I mean, if I had completely my druthers, what I would have done is I would have shot the entire movie in Colorado on the set and then came to Los Angeles and shot the entire movie again, at least interior-wise, in Los Angeles. I compromised a little bit, all right? But it ended up helping us out because, as you can see, we got all the weather that we needed, but it was mercurial, and we had to wait a while to get the weather. So, and there were like days upon days upon days where just the sun was out, and that was what we were dealing with. And then on those days, we just went into minis and just kept shooting and kept making it through the piece. And so basically all the daytime stuff was shot in Colorado. Then once it became night, then we moved to a set in Los Angeles and shot it. But the good part about the set in Los Angeles was because the weather was mercurial in Colorado, you couldn't count on the breath all the time. However, once we were in Los Angeles, we can make the set as cold as we wanted. So we got breath every day, every shot. All right, the cast was always drinking hot tea all the time. But that was also right because, now it's nighttime. So now it actually is bitterly colder. So then that was when the breath needed to emphasize everything.
Right. Well, it gives a great sense of space and location. I think it's incredible. I particularly love, when the camera pulls back the window at sunset, takes you around. I mean,
I think it's one of the more beautiful shots, just seeing kind of that orange light peeking through the slats in the walls.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. This project, I mean, famously or infamously, the script leaked. You did very well received reading of the script with some of the actors who are in the film.
Yeah, with most of them. Yeah,
with most of them. Did the script change much from that point? Did that inform your process in some way? Did it develop in different directions, or is this basically the script that you did with the reading?
No, it's not the script I did in the reading, but it didn't change because of that. I decided to write the script differently than I had ever written a script before. Normally, I'm connected to this script the way somebody is connected to a novel, and you work in this long way till you get to the very end, and then it's boom, that's it. And I decided on this one to do it a different way, insofar as when you get to the ending, when you get to the last 30 pages, and, it was always like, well, whatever happens is what happened. I've been writing it for this long, and now I know the characters, and they dictated that this is what happened, and that's what happened. I decided let me not do it that way this time. I want to spend time with the material. And I made a decision to write 3 drafts of the script before I, let it out and say, okay, this is what we're making. So the idea was to go through a first draft, and then a second draft, and then a third draft, and to just basically spend time with the material and just see how I felt. And maybe that ending would be different 3 different times, but I like the idea of telling the story 3 different times and seeing what would happen from it. And just to give you an example in that regards, the Lincoln letter, which became an important part of the movie, in the first draft was only brought up in the stagecoach when John Ruth reads it. And that was it. Because I really wasn't ready to do anything further with it. But I knew I had a couple more drafts so that I could think about it. And when that draft got released, that's why I reacted so badly. Because it seemed like they were truly fucking up this process that I was trying to do. They were kicking me right in the shins. I got over it. We had the script reading, and it was pretty well received, and that gave me a lot of confidence in the material, as did rehearsing it for 3 days with the actors before the script reading. But I still had, a ways to go. And just to give you an example, what we end up doing with Daisy, i.e., hanging her, was always my conception that, they would fulfill John Ruth's destiny by hanging her, which is her sentence per se. That was always my idea. However, as I got to that last chapter in the first draft, I questioned, is that misogynistic?
That's the sheriff of Red Rock. Hang on, Dave.
Do I know Daisy enough to kill her that way? I don't know if I know Daisy enough to kill her that way. I don't know if my own biases as a male or maybe are playing into this. So she ended up dying in kind of a random way, in a way that wasn't like a big build-up to a big conclusion. She died a little more arbitrarily. I think if I'm not mistaken, in the first draft, when she gets shot in the foot, in this chapter, he just shot her dead. All right, and there seemed the real integrity and the arbitrariness of taking her out in that way, and so that was the end of the first chapter. Now, I liked that, and I thought that worked, but I still wasn't satisfied. I still liked the idea of the hanging. So then I did a second draft, and in that second draft, not getting tricky about it, but I wrote it from Daisy's point of view. All right, and I don't think I played any games with the prose, but me, myself, the writer, was looking at it from Daisy's point of view. And it was my attempt to really get to know her. Now, in that version, Mannix ended up dying. And it was Daisy and Warren that had the moment at the very end. They're both going to die, but they were the last survivors of it. And when I finished the second draft, I felt I really knew Daisy. I knew who she was. I had no mysteries about her. I felt really good. And then I knew I could kill her. Then I knew I could hang her from the highest beam in the haberdashery and feel okay about it.
This here is Daisy Domergue. She's wanted dead or alive for murder. When that sun comes out, I'm taking this woman to hang. Is there anybody here committed to stopping me from doing that?
We were talking outside about Ennio Morricone a little bit, and I'd like to share that with the audience. This is the first of your films where you've used a score in this way, and I think it's incredible and marvelous. And the question I'd asked you is whether Morricone had done all the music for the film, whether it was all done bespoke, and you were starting to tell me about that process a bit.
Well, it was interesting because we'd flirted with working with each other for a while, but this seemed like the one to do. I had a little voice in my head saying this material deserved an original score. And I've never thought that way before. I never had that voice in my head before. I didn't ever want to trust a composer with the soul of my movie.
What was different here? Just the feeling.
I think it was the material.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was something about the material. I guess the word integrity comes to my mind, not to say that the other films aren't full of integrity, but I mean, there was something about this one that just, it was just, it was the little voice. It was just this little voice that said, this is the one. And so I took the first step, which was getting the script, the first step with Morricone is getting the script translated into Italian. And I sent it to him, and he read it, and his wife read it, and he really liked it, and his wife really, really liked it, which actually might have been the proper way to go. And then I got together to talk with him about it. And the first thing he said was, well, look, I want to know where you're coming from here, because you don't use a composer who writes a score that takes you from beginning to end. You take other people's scores and you use them the way you want to use them, and you do a pretty good job with it, and people seem to like it, so why would you want to change? And I go, well, I mean, frankly, to tell you the truth, I'm not 100% sure I do want to change, but I do want to talk to you about it. I want to explore it with you. You are my favorite composer, and I don't mean movie composers. I mean compared to Beethoven. I mean compared to Schubert. You are my favorite composer. And if it's ever going to work, it's going to work with you. But if it doesn't work with you, then I'll do it probably exactly that way. However, I did mention the little voice that said the movie deserved a score of its own. And so then we started talking, and he thought that I hadn't started to shoot yet. Little did he know I'd already shot, and I'd need the score in a month. And he's like, well, this is not going to work. I'm working with Giuseppe Totoro, and he just finished shooting the other day, and I got to do his score. I mean, this is not going to work. I was told a lot of things that aren't correct, and I'm really sorry. And I go, well, so am I. But, we're having a nice time and talking. And I go, well, okay, well, tell me what you thought about the script. And so he starts talking about the script. He goes, yeah, so I had this idea for a theme when I was reading the script that I actually thought was kind of intriguing and blah, 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 blah. I go, wait, let's go back. That theme that you said you heard in your head. What was it? And he goes, well, and I'm sure he was referring to what we use in the opening credits. He goes, well, I see a theme that's moving forward. There's a forward momentum to it that suggests a stagecoach moving forward. But the important part of the theme is the fact that it truly suggests the violence that will follow eventually. Well, that sounds pretty fucking good. He goes, what I can do is I'll write the theme. I'll give you a mixed version of the theme. I'll give you a version of the theme that's just brass. I'll give you a version of the theme that's just strings. And then with the other thing of pieces of music, now you have your original score that's never been used in a movie before. And I go, wow, that sounds fantastic. All right. So that was kind of the deal. And that's what I thought would happen. But then we were at an award show the very next day. And I saw him the next night. And he came up to me and he goes, I'm going to write you more music. And I think he literally sat down that night and started composing the theme that he was talking about and got more inspired and came up with more music. And then all of a sudden, 10 minutes of music became 17 minutes of music, became 35 minutes of music. All right. And so with that and the unused thing portions that I used is my original score.
Wow. Well, I could sit here and talk with you all night. Unfortunately, we're giving the wrap up. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for an incredible film, for all of your work, and thank you very much for coming to talk to us tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure.